Welcome to the Global Wellness HQ family of podcasts. We are your international headquarters for resources and ideas and insight in relation to the 9 elements of holistic wellness. Join us as we interview local and international wellness experts and learn how you can implement and improve one element or dimension of wellness at a time. Our experts will share their practical tips on wellness in one of these core areas: emotional, intellectual, occupational, physical, environmental, financial, spiritual, social, or habitual. We created our family of podcasts as a resource for anyone who is looking to integrate the 9 elements of holistic wellness into their daily lives. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm excited. I have my new friend, Joel Solomon. And Joel, why don't you start by introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you do?
Thank you, Jeff. First of all, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And what's most important is I'm a proud dad of two amazing, caring, thoughtful, awesome daughters, Lauren and Morgan. My company name, Salomon, Moore, is named after them. Lore for Lauren, Moore for Morgan. Lauren just started her sophomore year at Syracuse. She's 19 now, and she was just born yesterday. and Morgan's starting her senior year today in high school. She's on her way to being a doctor. She's already EMT certified, written 2 white papers with 2 medical research doctors. So I'm a proud dad of 2 amazing, on the way to be women. So that's firstly most important, and everything goes, starts there. I think you have kids, Jeff, so I think for me, my kids have taught me unconditional love. And you may have I tell my friends, you may love your spouse, but when you have kids, it's a different kind of love. You'll throw yourself in front of a truck for them. And so it has driven me. I got divorced in December of 2007, and I didn't want that to change their ability to live a prosperous life. And it drove me. I became a hedge fund manager in January of 2008. Trial by fire. You may remember 2008 was not the best year in the stock market, but I was driven. The market was down 40% that year. Financial companies were down 57, and those were the only companies I was managing. But I was driven to create abundance and prosperity for them and for me, but importantly for them. And I managed to make money in 2008 and more in 2009. And I'm doing this now because I started my own hedge fund in 2012, shut it down in 2016 to coach people, because I went to a personal development course while I had my own hedge fund. And there was a guy there at this personal development course speaking as a guest speaker for 1 hour about stocks and stock options. And when he spoke about options in particular, he made it sound easy. He said, you don't need much time, you don't need much money. This is how the rich people get rich. Options are essentially risk-free. And I was sick to my stomach. It was day 2 of the conference. I had people tapping me on the shoulder. Joel, does this make sense? They were whispering in my ear. And so after he was done, we went out of the auditorium. I told him, please don't do this. He doesn't know any of you individually.
Yeah.
And most importantly, he doesn't know your belief that you can become rich using options. See, out of the 200 people in the room, probably only a handful were likely to become rich using options. And yet more than 50 ran to the back of the room to sign up for his course. And what he had done is he had, moved their level of belief up temporarily, where it would come down in the days and weeks ahead. And so I realized that I couldn't sleep that night. And the guy was in my head. And I realized if I could ever get up the courage to speak on a stage, and my biggest fear in life that day was public speaking. If I could ever get up the courage to speak on stage, I could tell the truth about money, be authentic, serve people, and not mislead them. And so I got up in the middle of the night. I commuted into Manhattan, and I got into my office at 54th and 6th Avenue, and I sent an email to my investors telling them I'm giving them their money back. I'm shutting down my fund. I figured out my true purpose in life: to be a prosperity coach, to teach people the truth about money, and to shift their mindset if they don't believe that they can become rich or prosperous, but also teach them the truth about investing, whatever it is. And so my belief is everyone can be prosperous, but it's different for everybody. It could be options, and that's fine, and I'll teach you options, but it could be stocks, it could be real estate, it could be your business, it could be crypto, it could be bonds. But everyone's different, everyone has a different interest, and you got to treat everyone as an individual. Everyone's in a different part on their journey to prosperity, and I believe that everyone should be taught differently.
Well, and I think you pulled out, I'm going to pull out a couple of things that you said. That number one, everybody's journey is different. And number two, your journey may look similar to someone's, but if you've got a different mindset, you're going to get different results, even if you do the same thing. So how does one become and the first question in my head when I met you and I heard about you, how does one become a master prosperity coach, and what does that entail?
Well, good question. I prosperity is somewhat nebulous, but not. And so I teach the concepts of prosperity and abundance. You see over my right shoulder, I'm a certified infinite possibilities trainer. So Mike Dooley wrote a book called Infinite Possibilities. So I got certified by him and his team to teach the core concepts from that book. And that certified me to teach the mindset piece of prosperity. So, how thoughts become things, and how your emotions create and feelings are really the true arbiter of your life, because they create vibration and energy. And I say everything is energy. Money is energy. Everything's a vibration ultimately. So, knowing how you're vibrating, how you're feeling, what your emotions are. There's another important chapter in that book called Beliefs. And again, I teach how to shift beliefs from limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs. There's specific techniques that we're taught in Infinite Possibilities and how to do that. And so I teach those techniques specifically for money and prosperity. Mike teaches Infinite Possibilities generically for all things. So health, wealth, career, whatever you're interested in. I specifically get into the prosperity money piece of Infinite Possibilities.
I love that. And for the record, I always say I don't help people fix their mindset. I help people who've already figured out the mindset, because I just have no desire to get into that pond. But I love the fact that there are people out there, because that's one of the things I tell people: go figure out your mindset and then we'll talk. I like that there are people out there who are actively shaping mindset. I'm sure I could. I just choose not to. I want to deal with the people who already get it, rather than, the people who need that long, or they need a process to get there. Um, so I love that. Now, what does prosperity mean to you? Because I feel like there's a definition that people need to know. Is this a journey I want to be on with Joel?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I actually defined it in Mindful Money Management, and that's my first book. But it's okay. So prosperity is, for me, another word for abundance, and it's not just about money. It's about acting in a prosperous way, acting in an abundant way. So I believe there's an infinite amount of abundance and riches on this earth. If you have that perspective, think about the sun and the amount of solar energy it provides for the earth, that we're not capturing truly on a global basis, but it's enough to power the earth. The amount of sunlight and solar energy that comes to the earth in just a few days is enough to power it for years. And think about the number of blades of grass, the amount of drops of water in the ocean. And you get a sense how many trees there are on the earth, how many sand, how much sand there is on all the beaches on the earth, right? It's so there's so to me, it's having a perspective of abundance, having a perspective that there's so much out there. If you actually calculate the amount of net worth on the earth is $475 trillion. That number is hard for me to actually conceptualize.
A lot of zeros.
It's a lot of zeros. It's 12 zeros and 475 in front of it, almost 500 trillion. And that's the net worth of individuals and businesses around the globe. And so it's almost infinite. And by the way, that was $1 trillion 120 years ago. So we've gone from 1 to almost 500 trillion, up 474 trillion in 120 years. So and where did that come from, by the way? Ideas. It came from thoughts, right? And that's where prosperity comes from, is your thoughts become ideas. Think about every single building, every single house, every single skyscraper in Manhattan. You know, even the pieces of furniture in your home, they were all thoughts at one point. The chair you're sitting on. That's abundance. That's prosperity. You know, you think about those skyscrapers. When I walk by in Manhattan, you know, new buildings that are being built, and I'm not there every day, so you go in every week or two, and you see the shift, you know, from the ground being dug to the ball bearings, to the steel beams, and then you actually see, you know, glass and rooms and office space. It's really the amount, like, that's creation. And that was an idea that some architect had a few years ago. So that's how I would define prosperity. I don't know if that helps, but
I love that, because if you think about every tangible thing, one of my past guests said everything is created twice, once in our mind and then once in reality. But if you think about those skyscrapers, they're very tangible when you see them, but at some point they were just an idea in someone's head, and then an architect created the blueprints, and from the blueprint it became the building. And I think, honestly, Joel, I'm going to go on a tangent here. The blueprint is what a lot of people are missing. You know, they think, oh, I'd like to be abundant. You know, I'd like to have more of this, more of that. But then they miss the part about, you know, there's a blueprint in there, and then there's also the effort. You know, all creation takes effort. You know, and nature does it effortlessly, appearing so, but you know, forests don't grow overnight, they take time. So I feel like abundance is just recognizing that, you know, and I'm gonna talk about my personal feelings. I've watched the movie The Secret, and one of the things I think it was missing was the doing. You know, the message I got, anyways, was, you know, you sit on your couch and say, I want a bike, I want a bike, I want a bike, and magically there's a bike. Well, you've got to do some things. Am I missing the point, or am I oversimplifying?
no, absolutely. And it's really important in Infinite Possibilities. There's a chapter called Taking Action. Like, I will tell you, it's a chapter, and I will tell you, I've met a lot of billionaires in my life. As a former hedge fund manager, I interviewed and did due diligence on a lot of CEOs, some of them worth 1 billion and up. And I will tell you, none of them just sit at home and meditate and visualize all day, right? They get out into the world and they take action. Now, I'm not saying they don't do that. They may visualize too, but that's not only what they're doing. They're taking action, they're taking inspired action. And I do both as well. You know, I visualized being a money manager in 1993. And I went out and I asked money managers how they got there, what they do. And I took the steps that, out of hundreds that I asked, one guy told me. The rest of them told me, Joel, forget it. You can't do it. Just go back and be an actuary. I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. That's what FSA stands for. Just go back to your insurance company. You can't do this.
Yeah.
Well, I teach my clients now, hashtag doubt the doubt. Have faith in the dream. Why are you having faith in the doubt? And I understand it when lots of people, including my parents, told me, Joel, you have a great job. You're making a ton of money. Don't change. I decided that, no, I really want to achieve my dream. And, because of the doubt, it took me 15 years. But now I can condense my long road so that it can be your shortcut.
And I love the doubts, because I think, I'm going to share something with you, Joel, and I feel like I was accidentally dabbling in this community. But once upon a time, I was invited to do a speaking series. And my wife's first question, I love her, she supports me unconditionally. Her question was, what in your background tells you you can do this? And I'm not kidding, but in the moment, my response was, nothing in my background says I can't do this. So I may as well show up and see what happens. And it's funny because you mentioned that you were afraid of public speaking. I just never thought about it. Like, it wasn't on my to-do list. It wasn't on my radar. I was an accountant. I was happy behind the scenes running spreadsheets and crunching numbers. But like you, I got fed up with the common message. I got fed up with the common advice. And I started teaching accountants how to run their practices better and how to give better advice. And my wife's like, why would you do that? Because I have to. Like, there was no, oh, one day I'm going to be a public speaker and I'm going to, it was just believing that I could do it. And then my belief was really, really shaky at the start. It was just, I don't believe I can't do it, so I believe it must be possible. So
Nice. By the way, do you know the difference between an accountant and an actuary?
oh, I can't wait to hear a new accountant joke. Please share.
So an actuary looks at his feet when he talks to you. An accountant looks at your feet when they talk to you.
Oh, see, I used to tell it as the difference between an introverted and an extroverted accountant. But yes, that's
And
and,
and, and they say an accountant is an actuary with charisma.
wow. Okay. Well, we're gonna pick on the actuarial community. For the record, Joel, you're probably my fifth actuary I've ever met in my life, and like the first four, you bust the myth of the, you know, I met one lady. She was absolutely fascinating. She liked being out with people, and I'm like, how do you sit and stare at your actuarial? Because this was back in the day when you had actuarial tables. And I said, how do you do that all day? And she said, I let off my steam at night. And I'm like, ah. So
Yeah.
it busts the myth that actuaries don't like people. But it is a fascinating job. I'm not kidding. Once upon a time, I wished I was smart enough to be an actuary and not picking on accountants. But I loved the idea that I could play with numbers all day, because one of the challenges I had with accounting is you always got to stop and consider the people receiving the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
now, let's talk about your book, The 9 Money Rules Millionaires Use. And I'm not going to ask you to quote them all or read them to me, but what led you on that book journey, and what are some of the rules that might surprise people?
Yeah. So what happened was I wrote my first book, The Mindful Money Management, which was really a memoir of my career and how I got to become a hedge fund manager. And a few people read it and said, in between the lines here, there are rules that you used to become a hedge fund manager. So it'd be great if you put together a book with those rules. And I said, but I'm not a rules guy, I'm not. But I was like, yeah, I see how that could be helpful. And so I wrote the book because of those people. And I would say almost all of the rules are unconventional. In fact, the subtitle of the book is only the unconventional ones. So it's the 9 money rules millionaires use, only the unconventional ones. So like I already mentioned, rule number 2, trust your intuition. And I will tell you, if you ask any financial planner or financial advisor, they're not going to say trust your intuition. But as a former hedge fund manager, I will. Because I know that if I didn't trust my intuition, I either lost money or made less money. And then my clients will ask me, Joel, how do I develop my intuition? And I say it's just like any other muscle. I used to go to the gym and do curls to develop my bicep. So you're making hundreds of decisions every day. Play with it and use your intuition. You're on the subway platform in Manhattan. The local train's sitting there. The express is coming in a few minutes. What do you do? Local, express, local. What do you do? Trust your intuition. I used to, on Thursday mornings, take my daughters to school, and we had options. We could take the local roads, we could go highway, or we could hitchhike. Just kidding. So normally my intuition was telling me to take the highway, but there was one morning where the highway is all backed up with traffic. And my intuition was still telling me to take the highway, but my intellect said, what? It's backed up.
Crazy.
Go local. So I went local. I listened to my intellect. And immediately my stomach's in knots. I heard the sirens. I see the flashing lights. And because I didn't trust my intuition, it cost me a $150 speeding ticket. And to this day, my daughters tease me and call me Speedy Pants.
By the way, Joel, you have no way of knowing this, but people who like their kids are my people. I literally, total tangent, but I live for my kids. I adore them. And when people tell me, oh, I can't stand my kids or my kids are jerks, I always say, well, where do you think that came from? Because
Right.
just a hunch, but I think my kids are fascinating. And the reality is they live up to that expectation because I tell them they amuse me. I tell them I'm proud of them. They live up to that. And I love that your daughters call you Speedy Pants.
So intuition is one really important. And I would we're on vacation. To this day, we go on vacation and I'll tell them we're at the elevator, close your eyes, guess which one's coming first. Maybe there's 4 elevators, develop your intuition, check it out. It works. And it's powerful. It's your higher self giving you direction. And I believe that's more powerful than your intellect. So that's rule number 2. Another really unusual one we talked about before we got on, the air is giving. And I think it's probably the most, well, there's a few others that are pretty controversial too, but it's quite controversial. And I quote John Templeton, who some say was the best investor of all time. He started the Templeton funds with just a few $1,000s. And he sold it to the Franklin funds in the 1990s for almost $1 billion. So he said that he hadn't met anybody who hadn't given at least 10% of his earnings each year over a 10-year period, who didn't have massively more wealth at the end of the 10 years than at the beginning. And I know what some viewers are thinking, Joel, if I give my money away, how do I have more money? I have less. And I will tell you, by putting that money, I say money is just energy. And by putting that money out there, you're creating flow. And by hoarding, you're not creating flow. But if you're putting it out there, I've found in my life, it comes back and it comes back in multiples. And I just a quick story. When I wrote Mindful Money Management and it came out, the sales were piss poor, to say the least. And I was like,
is that an actuarial term, Joel?
Yeah, right. A number asymptotically close to 0. How's that? And
so works. We'll go with that.
Right. So I had talked about giving in the book, and I said, you know what, practice what you preach. And so I brought 50 books with me every time I went into Manhattan, and I gave 1 or 2 or 3 away to just passersby or somebody who might have been reading on the train. And a few weeks later, something really strange happened. Sales went through the roof. And I was like, it took me a few months to correlate it. It's like, wow, like I gave a lot of books away. And I truly believe that it can, the mindful money management and the 9 money rules, I think there's some good tips in there that can help people. So giving it away, like I feel like I was really giving them some money management tips by giving the book away and having them read it and hopefully make some changes in their life. So giving's a controversial one, but it works. And I will challenge the viewers to do an experiment for 30 days and give. And it could be your time, it could be a small amount of money. If you're, Manhattan is, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are homeless, a lot of people on corners that are begging. And I did this, like I think it's most important to give from the heart, not give because you feel like you're required to. So if it's not in alignment with your energy, people who are, listening or watching, don't do it. But if it feels right, go for it. And so that's what I recommend in the book. And it can change your life. It'll make you feel really good too. I remember there was a woman in Grand Central Station, and she was going through the garbage, and she was taking the bottles. At least in New York State, you can take the plastic bottles out and you get 5 cents. So she had this big plastic container full of all her bottles. And I just went over to her and gave her some money. And the gratitude, which by the way is rule number 5, the gratitude that she expressed to me was just like so heartwarming. I remember I was almost in tears, like going onto the train that day, because it felt like, wow, I thought about it, like it probably would take her a whole day to actually go get the bottles for the money I gave her. I saved her a lot of time and effort, and she was so grateful. It made me feel so good.
Well,
So you're
and I'm going to
changing.
put words in your mouth, but I mean, literally, the energy that was exchanged, you actually, this is a perfect example. You got back more energy than what you gave to this person. And yet to her, and I think that's a powerful statement. To her, as you said, it was probably a day's worth or more of her efforts. You gave her that, and effectively she gave you energy in return, which I don't want to sound like I'm completely new age and I don't believe in things, but I believe in that energy because you are now resonating at a higher level. You then talk to somebody about your book, and your patterns, your passion comes through because you're feeling higher level. Whereas had you not given to this woman, you probably would have been, at a lower level, and maybe you wouldn't have thought to have that conversation. So yeah, I love the practical and taking action is it fascinates me when people sit there waiting, and it's like, what are you waiting for? And they're like, I don't know. It's like,
Right.
how are you going to know that the universe works the way it's supposed to when you're just waiting? It's, some people want divine intervention. I said a prayer last night, and today I'm going to get that bike. But if you're not taking those actions, and that's the funny thing, I believe we're not smart enough to always understand the infinite plan. And maybe I want a bike, but the best thing for me is, I need a scooter or something. And, the universe is funny because it'll give you the lessons you need, not the lessons you want. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a great story. I just got an email from a client of mine who is working really hard on this one particular person who would become his client. And he said, Joel, this is a big deal. It's $20,000. What can you do to help me to create this? And I said, well, you're in the Bermuda Triangle of manifestation, because why, like, are you so smart that this is the client you're supposed to help? The universe may have somebody else. If you're focused on this one person, the Bermuda Triangle is the cursed house, right? So you're like, okay, this is how the money's going to come in. 2 is the person. You can't control other people. And by saying this is the person that's going to get me the money, you may be stopping the universe from allowing a lot more money to come in because there's somebody better who's more in alignment with you, and you can help them, they can help you. It's a symbiotic relationship. Maybe this guy is not the best person for you. So you just don't know. So I said, look, let go. Stop attaching, like, I've learned white knuckling it, like truly, like this is literally white knuckling it, right? And I
Yeah.
did that as a hedge fund manager. Like I lost money 7 days in a row. Like I got to make money today. And then I
Yeah.
realized, what are you doing? You're doing the opposite of what you're teaching, what you're practicing that other people should be practicing. It's letting go. And so once I let go, I started making money again and not attaching to, I gotta do this. So my advice is when you're feeling like this is the person, like let go. There's plenty of abundance, like we talked about earlier, there's plenty of abundance out there. And by attaching to this one particular person, you may be stopping the universe from providing you with a lot more money and a lot more alignment of energy.
Well, and you bring up a point. I'm going to apply it to my background. I've worked with a lot of salespeople, and there's a condition known as commission breath when somebody's so desperate, they're at the end of the quarter and they're like, oh my God, I got to close this deal or else. They spend all their time and energy trying to close that deal. They stop working their network. And I had a friend who he's an amazing human being, great networker, great connector, 88 days out of 90. But the last 2 days of his quarter, he's like, screw relationships, screw everything. I need a deal. And, he's got you by the throat and he's shaking you. And it's like, we're not going to do business today or tomorrow or ever. But his commission breath was so chronic. And I looked at him one day and I said, why don't you spend your energy building relationships that will help you meet your quota every day rather than, he'd go to the other side of, oh, I got to be nice, I got to help people. He never, I'm going to use Bob Berg's language and John David Mann. He was always breathing out and he wouldn't breathe in. But then at month end or quarter end or quota period, he'd literally choke the breath out of people saying, give me money or else. And I love one thing I love about abundance is either you believe in it or you don't, and either you're right or you're right.
Right.
It's a wonderful thing. So my early days of abundance, Joel, I'll just tell you this. I couldn't prove it existed. I couldn't prove it didn't exist, but I saw zero downside to believing in it and being wrong.
Right.
I saw all kinds of upside, but on the other hand, if I believed in scarcity and I was right, well, there was no upside. And if I believed in scarcity and I was wrong, I wasn't looking for an upside.
Henry Ford said, whether you believe you can or believe you can't, either way, you're right.
Exactly. And
that's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
It's fascinating that you're quoting Henry Ford, who, by the way, I love some of the quotes from Henry Ford. We're 100 plus years later, and these things are still true.
Yeah, these are universal truths.
I'm a big fan of Napoleon Hill, and the other one is Think and Grow Rich. Sorry, Think and Grow Rich is Napoleon Hill, but How to Win Friends and Influence People with Dale Carnegie. Again, there's no downside to me being wrong that those things work. All kinds of upside if I'm right that they work.
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich, I've read literally 29 times now. I've read it twice a year since 2008. And every time I read it, I get something. I was like, wait, that sentence wasn't there last time. And I'm like, and I asked my kids, why do you think that's true? And it's like, well, you're a different person. You're in a different place and you're seeing something new and different because of where you are. And it's absolutely true. And there's so much great content in Think and Grow Rich. And here's an interesting story about Think and Grow Rich and Napoleon Hill. Somebody in my network, because I send out a weekly email to my list. It's a video and email, and I highlight a member of my network. I give a money tip, and I also highlight the book I'm reading that week. And so a few weeks ago, I had finished my Think and Grow Rich for my first time this year, and I read it in June, July, and December. And one woman in my network said, I saw you highlighted Think and Grow Rich again. Here are some quotes about Napoleon Hill. And I was like, you can believe what you want to believe, but for me, there's so much excellent information and things that I can take action on. And it's such an uplifting, rags to riches, so many examples of people who down and out, who thought their way and took action to move towards financial freedom, that you can say what you want, but for me, I'm going to take the positive lessons from this book forever. And like you said, this book was written 100 years ago. Henry Ford was around over 100 years ago. And
Yep.
these lessons are timeless. So I'm going to take the timeless lessons.
Well, and it's funny because the detractors of Napoleon Hill, they want to get into his personal life and they want to share every mistake he ever made. And it's like, God forbid somebody does that to our lives. Were we perfect?
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm just going to say he needed to learn lessons to become who he was. And yeah, he struggled most of his life. And then in his retirement years, he was successful. But clearly he had lessons he needed to learn. And I think I'm going to pull back to what you said at the very beginning. Everybody's journey is different, and we all need to explore it on our own. I'm going to share something with you, Joel. I don't know if I should admit this, but in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill says there are two secrets that make everybody successful. And they were so evident to me, I didn't see them. I was like looking for something profound, and I read that book over and over and over, and I'm like, there's something wrong with this book, because it was like one of those, you see the picture in the they used to have those weird 3D pictures, and I'm staring at it going, I don't get it. And a friend of mine said the two secrets are, I think he said masterminds and desire. And I was like, oh, I just assumed that. So
yeah,
I was so busy looking for the secret, I lost the point of the lessons. And I was
right.
but when he pointed it out, I was like, oh, I knew that. It
Yeah,
wasn't a
yeah,
secret to me.
right.
But it was
Yeah,
just funny that,
having a burning desire and having a team of specialists around you, because you're not going to be expert in all things. And so, Henry Ford created the first mastermind, apparently, with, Firestone and even Thomas Edison in there in the beginning. So let me continue on the 9 money rules, just to give you one more.
yeah, one more. Let's
Which is, I would say, controversial for a $1 trillion industry. It's DIY investing. So I believe in my heart of hearts that you can do it yourself. And
let's just
I mean,
pause and let the industry gasp for a minute, because I hear villagers with pitchforks and
yeah, and look, I have the haters from my book, and it's okay. But I'm here to help. I'm here to serve. And so I truly believe that we came here to thrive, and we came here not to survive, just survive. And you can do it yourself. And it doesn't, it takes a 4th or 5th grade education in math. That's it. Add, subtract, multiply, and divide. And I also advise and coach my clients to take full responsibility for their lives. And I've had people come to me and say, Joel, my financial advisor is responsible for my money. Like he's got it covered, or she's got it covered. And I'm like, well, but you chose them. So you need to take responsibility no matter what. If they screw up or they do well, you chose them. So you need to take full responsibility for your life, and not, that's another important point in life, is to not blame others. You can take full responsibility for all aspects of your life. I've been divorced twice. I take full responsibility for it. I chose them. I will tell you, my second wife, she's been my greatest teacher in this lifetime. I've learned so much from her. So, and to be completely open with you, completely open. So anyway, the point is, you can do it yourself. It's not rocket science. In the book is a 5-step stock screen, and you can just use that to find stocks. There's a 7-step real estate screen. You can just use that to find real estate properties to invest in. You don't need any. It's, spend $5 and find use the techniques. But I truly believe that you don't need rocket science to find great investments. And
Joel,
whatever method you use, like, it doesn't have to be those methods, but like, trust your intuition, have very high level of belief. You have to have the desire to become financially free, right? We talked about desire. So those are important aspects as well.
Well, and Joel, I just want to point out it's very empowering. A lot of people want to play the victim and be a professional victim, but you say, you're responsible. And I find that very empowering because it is the accumulation of my decisions, my choices that get me where I am today. And, if I don't like where I am, I can change that. It's not woe is me. And I love your comment about your second wife being a great teacher. I mean, sometimes the universe puts teachers in our path that we may not enjoy the lesson, but we needed it clearly. So now I could talk to you about this all day, but I promised you I'd get you back to your world. How can people get in touch with you? How can they find out more about your master prosperity coaching?
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So at Salomon.com, that's SALAURMOR.com. I practice what I preach. Rule number 6, giving. I give the world 30 minutes free prosperity coaching. No obligation to do anything more than that. I want to help you. Maybe in that 30 minutes, things can shift. I'd love that. If you want more, there's more, but you can just go to my homepage and click on the link for your free 30 minutes prosperity coaching.
Awesome. Well, Joel, I sincerely want to thank you. You've been very generous with your time and your wisdom, and I want to thank you for hanging out with me today.
It's been my pleasure. I appreciate you. It's been a real honor. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our show. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to either click the link below or scan the QR code to register and listen to other episodes of our podcast. Or if you think your business or you would be a great guest to be on our show, we're always looking for experts in one of the 9 elements of holistic wellness. We'd love to have you. You can either click the link below or you can scan the QR code and complete our speaker intake form. Thank you, and to your wellness.